I've been a babysitter for my 4 siblings, but here's how this got started. I'm 18 now. I feel like I should be able to leave, go to college, and start my own life. My father passed away years back and my mom remarried. See, the thing is, she got married to a guy with 4 kids, and now they're out there just running around doing vacations, leaving me to watch the children, and I'm sick of it. When they're going on their next trip, I'm going to move all my stuff out, use my father's inheritance, and get my own apartment, and I don't care what she says.
Okay, deep breaths. I honestly never thought I'd be posting on the interweb. Especially not about my own family, but things have gone so sideways that I feel like I'm losing my mind. I need some outside perspective before I either explode or do something I might regret, or maybe something I won't regret. That's kind of the problem. Now, my question here is, am I the a-hole for potentially blowing up my family life after mom demanded half my paycheck the day I turned 18? Okay, here's the background and buckle up because it's a ride. My father passed away when I was 11. I'm 18. It was sudden, horrible, and completely shattered my world. About 2 years later, when I was 13, my mom remarried. My stepfather seemed okay at first, I guess. He came as a package deal with 4 children of his own. They ranged from 1 to 7 years of age. So overnight, I went from being an only child grieving my father to the built-in big sister live-in babysitter for 4 little kids whose mother was not really in the picture. A whole other story I barely know the details of because mom and stepdad are masters of vagueness. From the moment they moved in, the dynamic shifted. It was not subtle. My mother and stepfather both have demanding jobs, or so they say. They started taking frequent business trips, like really, really frequent. Sometimes for a weekend, sometimes for a whole week, sometimes even longer. A funny thing about these business trips, though, they always seem to coincide with a major school holiday or just really nice weather in places like the Bahamas, Cancun, Europe. Oh, and their social media? It was lit. Gorgeous couple selfies, fancy dinners, beach sunsets, you name it. Always carefully curated and posted after they got back, mind you. Never anything that kids might accidentally see and ask questions about. Meanwhile, guess who was holding down the fort? Yep, 13-year-old me. Then 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old me. I became the default parent. I got the little ones up, dressed and fed. I walked the older ones to the bus stop. I picked them up. I helped with homework. And I barely understood myself sometimes. I made dinner, learning mostly from a YouTube tutorial. I did bath time, bedtime stories, handled nightmares, fevers, scraped knees, and toddler tantrums. I became the emergency contact at their school because mother and stepdad were often unreachable. I missed out on sleepover parties, school clubs, and hanging out with buddies. My grades, which used to be pretty good, start to slip because, to be honest, no excuse. I was just exhausted mentally and physically. Trying to study with a screaming toddler clinging to your leg isn't exactly conducive to absorbing trigonometry. Well, whenever I tried to gently push back, maybe ask if they could find a real babysitter for one weekend so I could go to school and go to a school dance or something, the guilt trips were immediate and intense. My mother would get this wounded look and talk about how we're a family now, how these kids were my siblings. She'd say how much they loved me and depended on me. How could I even think of letting them down? Stepfather, of course, would chime in. Everyone's pulling their weight, and how grateful I should be for the roof over my head. Conveniently ignoring that it was the same roof I lived under with my actual dad. Guys, they were just gaslighting me, telling me I was being selfish or dramatic, and that looking after kids was just good practice for when I had my own. Practice? I was running a darn daycare while trying to survive high school and my own grief. Well, I remember one particularly awful birthday. I think I was 16. They were off on another urgent work conference in Hawaii. I spent the morning getting the kids ready for school, packing their lunches, and when I got back, I baked myself a cheap box mix cake. That evening, after homework and dinner and baths, I lit a couple of candles on it, and the younger two siblings started crying because they missed their father and did not understand why he and Mom were gone again. I ended up cutting the cake and serving it to them while trying not to cry myself, assuring them Mom and Dad would be home soon, even though I had no idea if that was true. Happy birthday to me, right? My only solace was knowing about the money my dad left me. He wasn't super wealthy, but he'd set up a trust fund that I can access fully when I turn 25. Crucially, though, he also left a smaller, separate inheritance that I could legally access the day I turned 18. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. I thought to maybe give me options, a lifeline, so I clung to that thought for years. Okay, fast forward to last week. My 18th birthday, it was anticlimactic. Mother and stepdad were actually home for once, probably because they knew this date was significant. They gave me a card with some cash, which ironically I probably needed to spend on groceries for the kids later that week, and made a generic part-time job at the local bookstore. Yeah. Well, welcome to adulthood was the speech they gave me over dinner. I'd also recently managed to snag that job I just told you, that local bookstore. It was a miracle considering my schedule. I got my first paycheck the same day, and was not much, just a few $100s. But holding it felt like holding pure gold. Freedom, independence, mine. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Mother called me into the living room. Stepdad was there, looking smug. My mom sat me down, put on her serious face, and launched into the whole spiel about responsibility. She said that now that I was officially an adult and earning my own money, it was time for me to properly contribute to the household. What? My stomach clenched. I asked what she meant. She tells me completely straight-faced that they expected me to hand over 50% of all my earnings from my part-time job. Any future jobs, even birthday money I might get to them, for room and board, for my share of the expenses, and I just stared at her. After 5 years of unpaid round-the-clock childcare service that saved them literally thousands, probably tens of thousands, after sacrificing my entire teenage existence for the kids in their lifestyle, now that I finally have a tiny sliver of something for myself, earned through hours I somehow squeezed out of my already overloaded schedule, they wanted to take half. The audacity was breathtaking. I tried to argue. I reminded her, voice shaking a little, about everything I've done for the past 5 years. I asked, how could they possibly think this was fair? Her response was ice cold. She told me that it was in the past and irrelevant, and that I lived under their roof, ate their food, mostly pizza I ordered or pasta I cooked, but whatever, and if I did not like the terms, I could find elsewhere to live. She actually said that, find somewhere else to live. Well, just like that, she leaned back, arms crossed, clearly thinking that she had me trapped. Stepfather just nodded his little head like a bauble toy, looking like the cat that got the cream. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. The years of resentment, exhaustion, feeling utterly used to be boiled over, I thought about father. I thought about the inheritance sitting there waiting, and I thought about the future I desperately wanted. College, a career, a life, where I was not constantly cleaning up someone else's mess, so I took a deep breath. Looked at my mother dead in the eyes and heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady, "Actually, Mom, I think I will move out." The shocked, almost horrified look that flashed across her face before she could school her features was everything. It confirmed that I suspected this all along. They never even thought that I would leave. I called their bluff. They were not trying to teach me responsibility. They were trying to keep their cash cow, or rather their free nanny service, locked down. They needed me. The panic started surging immediately. Her tone shifted, whiplashed fast from cold dismissal to tearful pleading. Suddenly, it was all about how I could abandon my poor siblings. Didn't I love them? How they could cope without me. Stepfather started chiming in too, suddenly concerned about family unity. It was disgusting. The manipulation was so blatant that it made me feel sick. They were not worried about me or even really about the kids' well-being. They were worried about their freedom, their vacation, their easy life being disrupted. I just stood up and asked them what they would do if I actually left. After years of me taking care of their kids while they vacation their heart out, this is going to suck, right? I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out of the room, went upstairs, and locked my door. My hands were shaking. I have the inheritance money accessible now. I can leave. I can get a small apartment, keep my job, maybe even start looking at community colleges. But the guilt is gnawing at me. The kids, they didn't ask for this. They adore me, and I do love them. Leaving feels like abandoning them to parents who clearly prioritize their own comfort above everything else. But staying means accepting this outrageous demand. It means continuing to sacrifice my life, my future, my sanity for people who see me as nothing more than unpaid help. It means letting them win. So, am I the a-hole if I follow through? If I take my inheritance, move out, and leave my mother and stepdad to finally figure out how to parent their own darn kids? What happens to the kids if I go? Am I being selfish, or am I finally standing up for myself? I mean, guys, let me ask you this question. What would you do? Updates number 1. Hey guys, well, first of all, thank you. I mean, seriously, the sheer volume of responses has been overwhelming in a really good way. I spent hours reading through the comments, and while there was this odd "you owe your family" troll, the vast majority of you were incredibly supportive and validated feelings that I've been suppressing for years. It helped more than you could have known. A lot of you urged me to get out ASAP and offered practical advice, which spurred me into action faster than I might have otherwise. It's been about 10 days since my OG post, and let me tell you, there's been a blur in my life. After that confrontation, the atmosphere in the house was thick with tension. Mother, stepfather, swung wildly between ignoring me completely and launching into a tearful guilt trip or veiled threats about how life is hard out there alone. It was exhausting. But reading your comments, especially those warning me that they might escalate or try to sabotage me leaving, lit a fire under me. Several commenters suggested I document everything. Little did they know I've been doing that instinctively for years. Maybe it was a subconscious self-preservation thing. I have phone photos, hundreds of them, timestamps showing the states of the house when they would leave versus when they get back. Yeah, spotless thanks to me. Photos of the children's school projects I helped with, the meals I cooked, even a few sneaky photos of their actual vacation that they'd briefly show me before posting the sanitized version online. I have saved text messages of them saying that they would be home Friday, then Sunday, then Tuesday, then asking me to just handle teacher calls or doctor appointments because they were, quote, in a meeting, aka by a pool. I even have copies of school forms listing me as the primary emergency contact. It felt weird collecting it all, like I was building a case, but now I'm damn glad I did. Armed with your advice and my dad's legacy, I acted fast. While mom and stepdad were, you guessed it, away on a critically important overnight business retreat 2 hours away that popped up very suddenly after a fight, well, I made my move. I'd already found a small basic apartment in a neighboring town, close enough to my job, far enough for breathing room. Used a chunk of the inheritance for the deposit, and last month's rent felt like the most adult, most terrifying, the most liberating thing I've ever done. Mom and stepdad returned later that day to find my room empty and no live-in nanny. Predictably, my phone exploded, voicemail, text, a firestorm of fury. Threats, you'll regret this, how could you do this to the children, they're devastated. The pathetic attempt at bargaining, maybe 50% was too much, what about 30? I ignored it all, blocked their number, of course temporarily, just to get some peace, but I could not ignore the children. The thought of them thinking that I just abandoned them, that leaving was their fault, or it was unbearable. So a few days later, after the dust settled slightly, I arranged to meet the older two, Chloe and Liam, 12 and 10, at a park near their school. I couldn't risk going back to the house. Seeing them was rough, they looked tired. Chloe, the oldest, has always been perceptive. She hugged me tight and whispered, asking if I was okay. Liam was quieter, just watching. I explained as gently as I could that I loved them all very much, but that as an adult I needed my own space to live my own life. Go to school, build my future, just like they would someday. I emphasized it had nothing to do with them. Chloe then dropped the bombshell. She told me that since I left, things have been weird. Mom and stepdad were fighting a lot, and worse, on at least 2 occasions when they both had to work late. Her, air quotes, not mine, They had just left Chloe in charge. Of the younger two, I mean, come on, she's 12. She said she tried making mac and cheese from a box, but kind of burned it. And Max had cried himself to sleep because he was scared. Liam added that sometimes they just get pizza delivered and the delivery person looks confused that only kids are there. Hearing this filled me with the sickening mix of rage and dread. They learned nothing, they just defaulted to the next available female regardless of her age, and it confirmed the worst about what would happen when I left. So now I'm sitting in my teeny tiny, barely furnished apartment surrounded by boxes, feeling torn in a million directions. I have my freedom, yes, but the image of Chloe trying to manage a stove while her little brothers are scared haunts me. I forwarded the info Chloe gave me to the kid's school counselor, just flagging a potential neglect, latchkey kid situation, but I don't know if anything will come of it. Calling CPS feels like dropping a nuclear bomb, and I worry about the fallout for the kids, especially if they get placed in foster care. But doing nothing feels impossible too. I escaped, but are they safe? Am I obligated to do more? How do I protect these kids I genuinely love like siblings, without getting sucked back into the black hole that is my mother and stepdad's selfishness? Where is the line between self-preservation and responsibility? What's my next move here, guys? Update number 2. Okay, it's been a couple weeks since my last update and things have taken a turn. A calculated turn, perhaps. Let's just say your comments about protecting the kids and me got me thinking outside the box. So after the heartbreaking park meeting with Chloe and Liam, I was furious. The idea of them leaving a 12-year-old in charge, it's neglectful, it's negligent and dangerous, and while I did report it anonymously to the school counselor, still waiting to see if anything happens there, I felt powerless. So I started to dig. Remember how I mentioned their curated social media? I went deeper. My mother, it turns out, has not just been posting vacation pictures. She's been cultivating a whole online persona under a cutesy handle, something like Glam Mom Adventure. Ugh. She's amassed a surprisingly large following on Insta and even had a blog. She presented herself as this aspirational supermom effortlessly juggling a career, a loving marriage, and raising 5 beautiful children, and maintaining a lifestyle full of travel, fashion, and home decor. You want to know the kicker? A lot of her content featured the house, always clean, beautifully decorated, that I busted my butt keeping tidy. She would post these pictures of family dinners that I cooked. She even had a post about craft time with the kiddos featuring projects that I supervised and cleaned up after. It was all smoke and mirrors, filters, and clever angles, presenting a fantasy life built on my invisible labor. She was literally monetizing the childhood I didn't get to have. Scrolling through her feed, seeing comments like, "Wow, you did it all," and "such an inspiration," made me physically ill. But then I saw something else entirely. It was a sponsored post. Guys, she had a sponsorship with several brands, mostly mid-range clothing boutiques, some goods companies, and, well, even a travel agency. Man, they were buying into a relatable yet aspirational family woman image, and then I found the potential jackpot. Through some careful clicking and following the digital breadcrumbs, I discovered that she was in final talks for a major sponsorship deal, like potentially 6 figures major. It was with a high-end family-focused lifestyle brand. Think organic baby products, sustainable wooden toys, and luxury strollers for, I don't know, the whole 9 yards. This brand trended, and it traded heavily on authenticity and wholesome family values. My mother became one of the main faces, Well, the irony was thicker than her Instagram filter. An idea sparked in my mind. It felt audacious, maybe even a little crazy, but also it felt right. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposing the lie that was hurting not just me, but the kids too. If her public image was her currency, maybe a little public truth was in order. Using another burner email, of course, and posing as an admirer of both the brand and my mother's inspiring journey, I contacted the marketing department of the big lifestyle brand, and I gushed about how amazing my mother was, how she seemed to manage everything so perfectly, and then I pitched an idea for their upcoming Mother's Day campaign. Wouldn't it be incredible to do a surprise feature? a sort of day-in-the-life candid piece showing her authentic parenting in action. I suggested they could arrange a surprise home visit. Wouldn't that be so heartwarming and genuine for the audience? To my utter astonishment, they responded and they loved it. They emailed my mother, pitching the surprise candid interview idea, and my mother, presumably blinded by the dollar signs and the ego boost, readily agreed. They scheduled the visit, not informing my mom of the exact date. And thanks to my years of tracking their business trip, I knew exactly what they were planning, their next getaway. A long weekend at a spa resort booked months ago. The brand proposed surprised visit date was smack dab in the middle of the trip. Well, now my priority was still the children. I could not have them caught in the crossfire or left alone when the brand reaps, showed up. So I coordinated with Chloe. I used some more of the inheritance money to book a fun weekend for them and arrange for a trusted former neighbor to look after them. The day arrived, the brand's marketing team, probably 2 or 3 people, armed with cameras and wholesome energy, arrive at the house, expecting to find Supermom, whipping up organic snacks and reading a story. Instead, an empty home. Well, not quite empty. I knew from Chloe that Mom and Stepdad had not bothered cleaning up before they left. So the team likely walked into a scene of dirty dishes, scattered toys, and laundry piled to the sky. Probably a few lingering takeout containers from the night Chloe was left in charge. My mother, contacted via speakerphone by the increasingly confused marketing team from her doorstep, apparently tried to scramble. I wasn't there, obviously, but I can just imagine the panic in her voice, excuses about a sudden family emergency that required her presence elsewhere, and apologies promising to reschedule. But the damage was done. The pristine little image was gone, and the authentic moment captured was one of the absence and neglect. Later that day, I got a cautiously worded text from my mother. "What did you do?" No context, no questions about the children, just that. And I didn't reply directly. Instead, I forwarded her the email chain between the lifestyle brand and me, with the burner account I used, obviously, where I initially pitched the surprise visit, and I added just one line. Authenticity seems important to them. Hope the spa was relaxing. I haven't heard back yet, so the silence is interesting. I don't know for sure if the deal is dead, but I can't imagine it would survive this fiasco. Update number 3. It's been about a month. Well. Hello again. Guys, I'm back with an update, so get this. The ripple effect from that little surprise visit? Yep, it's still spreading. Things have escalated in ways I did not fully anticipate, but honestly, I'm starting to feel less uneasy and more empowered. Maybe even a little bit ruthless, and I'm just not sure how I feel about the part yet. So after the brand visit debacle, and yes, I later got confirmation through the grapevine, aka Chloe, overheard furious phone calls that the 6-figure deal completely evaporated overnight. My mother went into overdrive. Not like overdrive with parenting, obviously, but overdrive with trying to salvage her precious image online. She starts posting even more frequently. Sickly sweet captions about the challenges and joys of motherhood. Filtered photos that must have been old or staged, and vague apologies, and about being a little offline due to personal matters. It was damage control, pure and simple. She also started talking seriously about taking her brand to the next level. Apparently, losing the big deal made her determined to build her own platform, less reliant on brand partnerships, and she mentioned wanting to launch an official website, maybe even online courses on balancing it all. The irony is physically painful. So guys, this got me thinking. During those long years stuck at home babysitting while my peers were out living their life, I did not just watch TV, I taught myself stuff online. Coding, web design, digital marketing basics. Now, hearing her plan, another idea bolder than the last started to form. I went to the domain register, GoDaddy. I searched for her cutesy little Instagram handle, variations of her name, and guess what? She didn't register any of the domains, not a single one. For somebody so obsessed with her online brand, it was a rookie mistake, so I bought every single one. Every .com, every .biz, every .web, every .org. Yeah, it cost me a couple $100 from my slowly dwindling inheritance fund, but it felt like a strategic investment. Then I picked the most obvious one, her .com, of course, and I built a website. At first glance, you might even think it was her official page. It used a similar color palette to her Instagram, but the content was different. Instead of filtered photos and aspirational BS, I laid out the facts. A simple chronological timeline. Mother remarries when OP is 13 and begins primary care for 4 step-siblings ages ranging 1 to 7. 2018. Mother and stepfather take 7 business trips totaling 48 days out of 365. Documenting via social media post with links here, and here. 2019. OP listed as primary emergency contact at elementary school due to parental unavailability. It went on like this year by year by year, right up to the demand for 50% of my income, and my subsequent move out. I used some of the photos I saved, the messy house before they got back, the school forms, and nothing overly dramatic or emotional, just facts. I added a section called a Caretaker's Corner, and here I posted anonymously, contributing photos, mostly mine, but framed generally, of kid-friendly meals, cooked, homework, help sessions, bedtime story routines, the actual unglamorous work of raising children. I contrasted it with screenshots of my mother's lavish vacations, posting from the same time periods. Then I strategically shared the link in a few niche online forums, places where people discuss parental neglect, narcissistic parents, and, crucially, the ethics of momfluencer culture. It took about a week, but then it started to gain traction. People start sharing it, other bloggers, particularly those critical of performative parenting online, picked it up. My mother and stepdad eventually found it, and the explosion was nuclear. My phone, which I had cautiously unblocked, went supernova. This time the threats were louder, more frantic. They demand I take it down. They threaten legal action, defamation, you name it. This is where my secret weapon came in handy. Remember how I said I documented everything, including our initial confrontation about the 50% hitting record on my phone during a few particularly nasty phone calls, where my mother tearfully admitted that they, quote, might have relied on me too much. Calls where stepfather angrily yelled about how I owed them for letting me live there after my dad died. Calls where they both explicitly acknowledged their frequent trips and my role as a caretaker while trying to guilt me into coming back. When their lawyer sent a blustering cease and desist lawyer, the letter in the mail, which they must have scraped together pennies for, I had my own, pro bono, student legal aid, response sent back, politely pointing out that everything on the site was factually accurate and backed by evidence. Oh, by the way, here's the transcript of the recorded conversation where your client admit to the core claims. Checkmate. The legal threats stopped dead beats, but the fallout at home apparently intensified. Chloe tells me during another peak meetup that mom and stepdad are fighting all the time. Stepdad's furious about the lost brand deal and the public embarrassment, and he's apparently blaming mom for being too obsessed with her stupid Insta and for driving me away. The most unexpected thing was my inbox associated with the website started to fill up. Not with hate mail, but with messages from other teenagers and young adults, people who were or had been in a similar situation. They shared their stories, and it was heartbreaking and incredibly validating. I've started cautiously replying, sharing resources I found, and just listening. It feels like maybe something good can come out of this mess. Last night, I got another call from my mother. No yelling this time, her voice was low and strained, and she offered me $50,000 to take down the website and sign an NDA. $50,000. Money that clearly they don't have, which tells me how utterly terrified she is. She tried to frame it as helping me get set up and putting all this behind us. For a split second, I was tempted. That money would be life-changing right now, but then I thought about the messages in my inbox. I thought about Chloe and Leah, my younger ones, and I thought about the lies that she so desperate was to maintain. I told her I'd think about it, but honestly, I don't think that I can take the money. Ugh. Update number 4. It's been almost 6 months since my last update, and honestly, it feels like a complete lifetime. So the website, it did not just get traction, it caught fire. After I refused my mother's $50,000, which felt incredibly good, the site continued to circulate in those online communities, and eventually it landed on the radar of a fairly major parenting blog, one known for her sharp commentary on influencer culture. She did her own digging, easily verifying my mother's identity and connecting the dots I laid out. The exposé she published was scathing. I took screenshots from my website, the timeline, the evidence. She detailed the surprise visit fiasco and the lost sponsorship deal. The piece titled something like The Hidden Labor Between Mom Influencer Perfection. It went viral. The fallout from my mother was swift and brutal. The remaining smaller brands associated with her dropped her like a hot potato. Public comments on her social media turned from fawning admiration to outright disgust. And stepfather, faced with a social nightmare, the complete collapse of mom's income stream, and what I later learned was a mountain of pre-existing debt that he had not fully grasped, finally hit his limit. He filed for divorce. Apparently the website and the public shaming were the final straw on an already broken camel's back. Their fights, according to Chloe, became epic and terrifying until he just finally moved out. The divorce proceedings unearthed the full extent of their financial disaster. They've been living wildly beyond their means for years, funding the vacations and designer bags with multiple loans and maxed out credit cards, and have even rumored to have dipped into funds meant for the children. Yep, that's right. The house, it turned out, had not had its mortgage paid in months. Foreclosure was not a risk, it was inevitable. Mother had apparently been hiding the notices, and then came the biggest twist, one that I never saw coming. The step-sibling's biological mother reappeared, Sarah. Apparently she saw the viral exposé online, and she contacted stepfather, her ex, wanting to know what the hell was going on with their kids. Turns out Sarah had not abandoned them years ago, as mom and stepdad implied. She just moved away for a job after a messy divorce, but had been sending substantial child support payments consistently. Payments that it became horrifyingly clear Mom and stepdad had been pocketing and spending on themselves while telling Sarah the kids wanted nothing to do with her and threatening her that if she tried to make contact, well, Sarah had proof. Bank statements showing the transfers, save texts from my mother being vile and territorial about her children. Sarah contacted me next through the website, horrified, heartbroken, and furious about what had happened. She asked if I could help her reconnect with her kids, and this part was delicate. I met with her first. She seemed normal, stable, overwhelmed, certainly, but genuinely committed to making things right. She worked 2 jobs, lived modestly, and her main concern was her children's well-being. With Chloe's cautious blessing, I helped facilitate a meeting, then another, and slowly, tentatively, the kids started spending weekends with Sarah. It wasn't perfect instantly, but it was real. Sarah showed up for school, the plays, packed them lunches that were not just Lunchables, and listened to them. They started to heal to trust her, and seeing them laugh with her, it had them relaxed in her care. It was profoundly moving. Anyway, stepfather is living somewhere else, dealing with divorce and the fallout of a massive debt. He sees his kids occasionally, supervised by Sarah, of course, and their relationship is strained. Sarah, even temporarily, got custody of the 4 kids while the divorce and custody modifications are finalized. They live with her. It's a smaller place, they share rooms, but it's full of stability and genuine affection. Yesterday was my 19th birthday. Quiet one, just dinner and a couple of friends, then I got a text from Mom. First contact in months, it said she hit rock bottom and was truly sorry. Cue the eye roll, and desperately needed financial help just until she gets back on her feet. I blocked her number right after, and as I look at the photo now, seeing those kids finally safe in love with their actual mother, a woman who works tirelessly for them without needing an Instagram filter to prove it, I feel closure.